Dear EA members, stakeholders, regulators, authorities, industry, consumers, and any other persons interested on this webinar, good morning and welcome to this webinar on the European blockchain technology for the use in accreditation and certification. We are impressed by the huge interest on this webinar. We have more than 400 people registered, and we have now around 170 participants, and the number is still increasing. So I hope that many registered persons will join us soon, and this interest is really great. My name is Andreas Steinhorst. I'm the Executive Secretary of EA, the European Corporation for Accreditation. Because I cannot expect that everyone is familiar with EA and its activities, I would like to provide you a brief overview about EA. EA is a European Association of National Accreditation Bodies. We have 49 members from the member states and countries throughout Europe, and from countries covered in the EU neighborhood policy. Our members have been appointed by its government as a sole accreditation body in its country. Within the EU and EFTA, but also in several other European countries, accreditation is an activity of public interest, which means that our members are acting as public authorities. We have a close relationship to the European Commission. EA is recognized according to Regulation 765, that the EU regulation on accreditation, as a European accreditation infrastructure. And we have signed a framework partnership agreement with the European Commission and EFTA. Besides the EA peer evaluation system and the harmonization of accreditation throughout Europe, one key activity of EA is the support of the European Commission regarding the application of accreditation and conformity assessment in EU legislations. Currently, there are more than 110 EU legislations which take recourse to accreditation and conformity assessment according to Regulation 765. The reason for this wide use of accreditation is because accreditation is a preferred, and let me say the best, means to demonstrate the competence of conformity assessment bodies. And this brings me to this webinar. Not only, but especially in the context of digitalization, it is very important that regulators, authorities, industry, consumers, and any other users of accreditation and conformity assessment activities and results can totally rely and have trust on the information they receive. That includes reports, certificates, and any other statements of compliance with specific requirements. And this information shall be available directly without too much effort of searching in the internet or somewhere else, but with a guarantee of its validity. For this purpose, the European Commission has developed a blockchain technology called EBSI, which can be used inter alia in accreditation and certification, and this technology and its application will be presented today. And there's already the first potential sector where this technology can be used. And this is the electronic freight transport information regulation. But the aim is that perhaps other regulated sectors will follow. I'm so happy that we have two experts from the European Commission who are going to inform us about this European blockchain technology and its potential application for regulatory purposes. But before we start, a few housekeeping issues. For the question and answer session, you find a new functionality on your dashboard in Teams. Please use for questions this feature, and please don't use the chat function. We will not follow the chat. Hence, use the QA function for questions later to the speakers only. That's important, and thanks for that. In case of technical problems, please contact via email my colleagues at the Secretariat, Ms. Amandine Comp and Mr. Sandy Adonel. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and perhaps later published on YouTube. You have to agree with the recording, otherwise you cannot participate. But there will be no personal data from participants recorded or published. And now I've already seen that we have now more than 220 participants, and the number is still increasing. But however, with this, I'm going to stop with my introduction and welcome the first speaker, and that is José Manuel Panizo Plaza. José is working at the European Commission in DG Digit, the Directorate General for Digital Services. José, thanks for being with us, and now the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks a lot, and good morning, everybody, and thanks to all, especially to Andreas, for offering us the opportunity to present EBSI today here with you, to you. First of all, let me present myself. As Andreas has previously mentioned, I am José Manuel Panizo, working as EBSI Technical Coordinator. I'm working for the European Commission in DIGIT, the Directorate General for Digital Services. In DIGIT, we are providing IT services for the European Commission, but we are also developing tools and services to support the regulation of other DGs in the European Commission. I'm working in DIGIT B3, Sector 1, called as Building Blocks and Innovative Solution Sector. The role of DIGIT in EBSI is to lead the implementation of the project, the technical work stream. And today I'm here also with my colleague, Lia Potec from DG Move. They are leading the FT regulation. And I would like also to mention that in my previous work experience, I was working in the Royal Spanish Mint, which is a qualified trust service providers for the EIDAS regulation. During more than 14, 15 years, we were being evaluated by some of you, the Conformity Assessment Bodies. So I really know the importance of the accreditation and the certification services. And this is why this presentation is also very important for me. Okay, so having said that, maybe we can jump to the next section, to the next slide, sorry. And first of all, we are going to analyze how the accreditation and the certification model works today. Next slide, please. Okay, sorry. Yeah, perfect. So in order to establish trust in products, services, people, and system, we have to establish trust relationship. These relationships are established at a sectorial level under a trust framework, under agreements with concrete rules and processes. Today, we are using services, systems, and in some contexts, we need to trust them. We need to verify if we trust on them. We need to verify the processes that are behind these services and these systems. For that, we need the trust model. And today, the trust model that we are using is standardized, as we can see in this image. We have first regulations and sectorial agreements that they are defining the legal framework. We have national accreditation bodies that they issue accreditation to CAPs, to the Conformity Assessment Bodies. under a certification scheme. We have the CAPs, the Conformity Assessment Bodies, that are evaluating services, product, systems, and people sometimes, and they are issuing certification. And finally, we have services, products, people, and systems that are certified under a conformity assessment scheme. So we can say that we trust in tangible outcomes, like the services, the product, the people of the systems, because we can uniquely identify the actors that are participating in the provision of these services, in the context of a domain, of a regulation, and we can trust on them because the conformity of these services, systems, and products is evaluated in the context of a regulation, a standard, best practices. So we can say that we trust in services and systems because we trust in the national accreditation bodies and conformity assessment bodies that are participating in the evaluation of these services. Next slide, please. So we have the regulation 765 of 28 that is setting the legal framework for accreditation services. This regulation is highlighting the added value of the accreditation and certification service, and this regulation is consider these services as a public good, as a service of public interest. So for that, this is why the ultimate level of control is entrusted to a public authority, the national accreditation body of every member state. These national accreditation bodies, they are evaluated by other signatories of the multilateral agreement in a peer evaluation to ensure harmonized practices and continuous improvement. They are notified by member state. These national accreditation bodies, they accredit conformity assessment bodies, and they issue accreditation for conformity assessment bodies. These accreditations, as we can see here, should be publicly accessible, and usually they are subject to a life cycle. I mean, they can be revoked, they can be suspended, or they can be reactivated. Next slide, please. The regulation 765 is also setting the legal framework for conformity assessment bodies. This organization apply for accreditation in a specific sector to the respective national accreditation bodies. Once they are accredited, the CAPs, they can assess services, products, systems, and people for conformity with technical standard specifications or sectorial agreements. Once the audit is successful, this provider receives what they call the Conformity Assessment Report, or the CAR. It can be a certification, it can be a report. This certification can be publicly accessible when relevant, or by the contrary, they can be considered restricted or confidential information. And also, the life cycle of this certification can be revoked, suspended, or reactivating during the validity time when it's relevant. For example, imagine that the certification is not more valid because there are some conditions that has changed, or there has been a mistake in the certification process, or maybe the information provided is not valid anymore. Or maybe this certification can be considered as a one-shot certificate, which is not linked to a validity time. They just mean that the product or the service is certified as it was presented, and that's all. Next slide, please. So we can see that this is the common trust model behind the European Conformity Assessment System. Accreditation is the last level of public control European system. The accreditation is performed by national accreditation bodies. These bodies are ensuring that others, the conformity assessment bodies, for example, laboratories, certification bodies, have the technical capacity to perform their duties. In this diagram, we see that the national accreditation bodies are issuing accreditation to the CAPs, and they are issuing certification to products, services, systems, and people. Sometimes this information should be made publicly available in a list. The list can contain information of the NAPs, of the CAPs, and sometimes information of of products, system, people, and services that have been certified. The accreditations can be linked to a life cycle, they can be renewed, they are valid, they can be suspended, they can be revoked, and also the certification. As we have seen before, when relevant, the certification can be suspended, revoked, can be reactivated, or sometimes they are a one-shot certification. So here we can see that there is a natural ecosystem of already established trusted relationship. Next slide, please. But on top of that, we see that the accreditation model is creating extra work and efforts, which means time and cost. We can see here that the member state, they have to maintain up-to-date information of the national accreditation bodies. National accreditation bodies, they have to make publicly available the information of the accredited conformity assessment bodies. They have to manage the life cycle of the accreditation, which can be valid, revoked, or suspended. And they have to distribute the accreditation to enable citizens, companies, consumer in a general way to verify this information. And we have also that the conformity assessment bodies, sometimes they have to maintain an up-to-date list of services, products, and systems that the CAB has certified. They have to issue conformance certificate. They have to manage the life cycle of accreditation for services and systems when relevant. I mean, they can be valid, revoked, or suspended. And they have to distribute the certification of services and systems that has been evaluated when relevant. Sometimes this information doesn't have to be distributed. Next slide, please. So now we have made analysis of the current accreditation ecosystem, and we have learned that there are some challenges in the verification of information. First, sometimes there is a lack of digitalization of information. We have seen that in some cases, accreditations and certifications are represented in legal text, or they have been issued as hand-signed documents or digitally signed PDF. This information is sometimes difficult to obtain, is hard, and sometimes it's very difficult, almost impossible, to verify the status in real time, and sometimes it's not machine readable for automatic verification. Second, we have seen that the interoperability sometimes is difficult. Domains are using different formats and different ways to express accreditation and certification information, and also the information is stored in many places. In some domains, we see that the verification rules, they are not always documented, and therefore they are very difficult to execute and to verify the information. And third, we have seen that the process to distribute the information and to maintain the information up to date sometimes is very costly, because the actors that we have seen that they participate in the accreditation and certification services, they have to maintain trusted list up to date, which is very relevant, which is crucial for a successful verification of information. However, we have seen that the distribution of information is challenging and is costly. Today, trusted lists are not interoperable between domains, and even sometimes they have a similar format. For example, they represent the information using 509 digital certificates. We can find sometimes lack of interoperability between domains. And also from our analysis, we have concluded that is needed an efficient management of the life cycle of the accreditation and certification. For example, to revoke the certification of accreditation when relevant. This is crucial to complete the verification path. Next slide, please. Also, to add to this analysis, I would like to mention that in our digital current context, we are in an environment of cyber attacks. So these repositories that can maintain and contain information about the accreditation and certification model can be a key target for these cyber attacks. So in order to reply the current threats to information security, as mentioned here are the Santa Claus wish list for systems that are providing information about accreditation. So I was saying that as part of this analysis, we have foreseen which will be the desirable properties for a repository of information for a trusted infrastructure that is supporting the information about accreditation or certification services. As I said, we are in an environment of cyber attacks, and this information should fulfill to a set of properties in order to reply the current threats to information security. We have here identified the properties which should follow a desirable implementation of a trusted list of a repository of information. So these are the properties for a repository of information to support accreditation and certification bodies. Here we consider that the information should be resilient. I mean, the information should be distributed to avoid a single point of failure. The information should be provided with high availability and also with a great performance. The information should be always accessible and digitally verifiable. The information should be implemented in a common format to facilitate interoperability between domains. This information should be easy to access and to share through standard interfaces, for example, using HTTP, the protocol of Internet. The information should be provided in human-readable and also in machine-readable formats if needed. The repository of information should be scalable and resistant to cyber attacks. And one property that we consider very important is this repository of information should provide past information. I mean, it will be very useful to have an implementation of chronological proof of historical information, for example, to obtain which was the accreditation valid 3.5 years ago to verify information in the past. Next slide, please. And now let's go to the what if. The question is, what if we have already a trusted infrastructure supported by member state from member state to member state with an already defined trust model and services to store verification information that has been already tested by European projects? The question is, could this infrastructure also help to promote the priceless value of the European accreditation and certification program? Can this infrastructure help it to differentiate it? Let me start this short history by giving a little of context of what is EBSI today. Next slide, please. EBSI was born 4 years ago with the main aim of building a decentralized network governed by member states and also the European Commission to support the digital verification of attestation. I mean, digital credentials in the context of public services. The information stored in the network is only public information. We are not storing personal data. And the information is stored in what we call the EBSI trusted registries, which is a potential information of a decentralized trusted list. It's important to mention that the network is completely supported by member state. The European Commission doesn't have any node in the network. The network is aligned with European Union regulation, for example, like GDPR. As I said, we are not storing personal data, just the minimal needed information to verify digital information in a private and transparent way. EBSI is following decentralized principles, but what does it mean in practice? It means that entities like national accreditation bodies or conformity assessment bodies can be sovereign. I mean, they are authorized to modify that information that is stored in the network about themselves. In that way, we are removing the need of a central authority, avoiding a single point of failure, and also enhancing the resilience of the infrastructure. EBSI is supported by blockchain technologies, but it's important to mention that it's a permissioned network. I mean, only member states are providing nodes. Only authorities entities, like for example, today are participating in the network qualified trust service providers, universities, or public agencies are providing nodes to the network. If a node wants to be added to the network, they have to be endorsed by the member state. And also to mention that EBSI nodes, they are in line with the green agenda of the Commission. They are not competing for mining transaction like in other protocols, for example, Bitcoin. This is a network based on what we call the proof of authority. I mean, we don't need nodes competing to achieve a cryptographical challenge. The nodes, based on proof of authority, as we can trust on the node by themselves, they are committing transaction to the blockchain. So in that sense, the energy consumption is really low. The energy that we have made some tests, and the energy that is consumed by a node, by an EBSI node, is lower than a web server, for example. Next slide, please. Just to mention here that blockchain is one of the technologies that has been selected in the European Commission program, Europe's Digital Decade. This program, the Digital Decade, is covering a set of targets to reach by 2030. For example, one of these targets is the total digitalization of public services. Blockchain is considered as a key technology to reach these concrete targets of the digital transformation of public services and business processes. And also here it's important to mention that blockchain is a concrete type of electronic ledger. And we have seen that in the proposal to amend the IATA regulation, that by the way is going to be voted today by the Parliament, has included electronic ledgers as a new type of qualified trust services. What does it mean? That is, the information stored in a blockchain, in a ledger, can has the maximum legal recognition and can be accepted in cross-border transaction. Blockchain, as we can see here, has multiple application and fields. For example, in the context of EBSI, we are working or we are planning to work with 4 big groups of use cases. We have here, for example, track and trace for traceability of products in the supply chain. We are providing also verification of information for digital documents. We are also working with projects that are working in the anti-counterfeiting strategy to fight against fake products. And we have projects also with intellectual property rights management to represent the information of brand owners. Next slide, please. So the previous family of use cases, they have materialized in concrete projects with European bodies and with public and private organizations. For example, here we can mention that with the diploma use case, we are working in projects that are issuing high education institution diplomas, proof of records, My Academic ID, which is an identification system that is used in the network of universities, micro-credentials. We are working also with the Europass digital credentials. We are working with UIPO, the European Union Intellectual Property Office, for the issuance of intellectual property assets attestation for brand owners. And we are working also with them and with other projects for the traceability use case, for track and trace capabilities to represent the information in the supply chain. Also to mention here that EBSI was piloted in the context of SPAS, the initiative for the Commission for the Digitalization of Social Security. Here, EBSI was piloted as part of the issuance and the verification of portable document digital credential. Next slide here, please. So here we can see a summary of the more than 25 projects that today are piloting EBSI through different opportunities, like the incubator program EBSI Early Adopters, also European Union granted projects like the Digital European Program projects, and other European Union-wide projects like SPAS, Europass, or EBSI ELSA from UIPO. The number of projects is growing. We have classified the projects in 3 main branches. We have here verification of documents, verification of information related with products and traceability of products in the supply chain, and verification of legal entities. We see here only one project for verification of legal entities, but the verification of legal entities is covered in all the other projects because the entities that are entitled to issue credential, for example, for verification of documents, to issue a digital, for example, a digital diploma, is also verified using EBSI. So let's jump now to the next section. Next slide, please. We are going to talk now about which is the main benefit, the concrete added value of EBSI for you, for the accreditation and certification services. How can you benefit from EBSI? Next slide, please. As I have explained before, the main added value of EBSI is verification. So as you have seen, we have a set of actors that they have registered their information in EBSI. in the blockchain. You probably know that fake information is a real problem today. We have seen that thanks to new technology, for example, like artificial intelligence, it's very easy to produce fake representation of ourselves, of other images. And just to say some numbers based on European Commission and other organization studies, we can say that 20% of Europeans, they have experienced identity theft fraud between 2018 and 2020. Based also in a report by UIPO, the European Union Intellectual Property Office, more than 50% of products imported into Europe are counterfeit, and they are potentially not compliant with European health and safety regulation. As a result, European Union custom authorities, they estimated that 86 million products, they were counterfeit with a value of 2 billion euros. And just to mention other estimation, this is regarding claims of legal entities. And according by a report of the European Commission about greenwashing in the European Union, the 59% of environmental claims, they were identified by this study, and they didn't have any evidence, and the 22% of these claims were fake. So we have seen that fake information is a real problem in Europe. And as the remedy to a virus is a vaccine, verification is the antidote against fake information. Next slide, please. So thanks to new technologies, for example, like verifiable credential, digital wallets, or blockchain, we can see a new model of verification, which is privacy preserving. It doesn't rely on third-party platforms, and it's offering a unique, interoperable, easy to access, and also a secure repositories of information. In this model, we see that issuers and accreditation actors, they are onboarded in EBSI. It means that they are registering their information to permit the verification in the blockchain. We see also that holders, that can be citizens or companies, they can request to the issuers, to the trusted issuers, credentials that contain claims about themselves. And we see other actors like verifiers or relying parties, they can easily check the validity of these credentials in real time using HTTP interfaces in a repository that is always available. Thanks to the common data model, a data format, and signatures that are offered by EBSI, different domains can verify information between themselves very easy. For example, a company can easily verify claims of other company, or for example, a work attestation of a candidate to a selection process, or they can verify a diploma without knowing additional information of these domains. Next slide, please. So now let's try to be concrete and pragmatic, and this is what EBSI can offer today to the accreditation and certification bodies. EBSI is offering a trust model that is implemented in trusted registers that are stored in the EBSI network, in the EBSI blockchain. This trust model is digitalized, machine readable, and permits real-time verification. It offers a multi-domain trust model to express different trust relationships that exist today. We are not creating trust relationships. They exist, and we are just implementing this in the network, in the EBSI trusted registries. EBSI represents a secure, replicated, and distributed repository of information. EBSI is also using open standards and well-extended signature formats to represent, to sign, and to verify information in order to enable interoperability between different domains. And EBSI is also offering a revocation framework to facilitate the management of the life cycle of accreditation and certification. Next slide, please. So based on our experience with use cases, application, projects, working with public bodies and institutions, we can confirm that the integration with EBSI of the accreditation ecosystem is going to bring some benefits to you. First, you will use an infrastructure that is managed by member state, from member state to member state. This project is governed by the European Blockchain Partnership, a coalition of member states, and this will be transitioned soon to a new EDIC, which is a European Digital Infrastructure Consortium called European, and is also managed by member state. EBSI is ready to implement, so member states can integrate their current services in EBSI thanks to what we are providing today: specification, services, APIs, libraries, and we have also, which is very important, more than 24 software providers, IT providers, that are providing technology ready to use, aligned with our specifications. Thanks to all these services and software, national accreditation bodies and conformity assessment bodies, they can register public keys, certificates, and information about themselves. You can use an infrastructure that is already in place. It will be used with other projects, with other public services, so it will mean a reduction of cost in the operation of the services. EBSI is aligned with the European Union principles, for example, like GDPR, and is compatible with EIDAS regulation, EIDAS version 1, because we are providing guidelines to ESIL and ESIM verifiable credentials. And in the context of EIDAS 2, as I said, electronic ledgers are going to be included as if the regulation is approved as a new type of trust services. And EBSI has been already tested by public administration. We have, for example, use cases from the educational and social security public ecosystem that they have already tested EBSI in cross-border projects. Next slide, please. So EBSI, as I said, is based on blockchain technologies. And coming back to the previous slide, talking about the security properties of a repository of information, we can quickly review the potential implementation possibilities of a repository of information. Here we can see that the current implementation of some trusted list is stored in static files that are distributed. They are providing some security properties of the information, for example, integrity, authenticity, of proof of existence, thanks to timestamps, digital signatures, and digital seals. If we want to add additional properties, for example, we want that the information is distributed, is replicated, is resilient, and is offering a high performance, we are transitioning to a model close to a distributed database. But if we are adding some additional properties that in the context that we are today, in the 21st century, in a context of cyberwar, can be desirable. For example, the information should be accountable. I mean, we should know which entity has changed any information in the repository of information. The repository should provide a chronological set of data record. What does it mean? We want to know which was the accreditation valid and if it was valid 3.5 years ago to permit the verification of information in the past. If we want an access management that is not relying in additional layer, that is provided in an accountable way and incorporated in the protocol, here the perfect role of a smart contract, which is software that is embedded in the blockchain technologies. Also to mention that EBSI is constituted an immutable register. I mean, information can be appended, but it can never be deleted, thanks to the properties of blockchain technologies. And just to say that the information provided by blockchain technologies, the integrity and the tamper-proof protection is protected by a network, not by a single node. So this is the concrete added value of blockchain technology. So as you can see here, all the approaches are valid, all the approaches are providing security properties, but we believe that blockchain technology to support information of verification is the best candidate. As I said, the supporting a resilient tamper-proof trust model with low level of energy consumption, thanks to the protocol that we are using. Next slide, please. So now let me focus on the trust model that EBSI is providing and how the information is distributed. Next slide, please. We can see that the trust model of EBSI is based in the same trust model that we have been building in Europe during all these years, where we have actors that are authorized to do something, to execute an action. Here, for example, to issue a credential, or in the context of today, to issue a trust mark or a conformity assessment report. And we have also other actors that are accrediting the previous actors. So to implement this trust model, and in this line, EBSI has designed a trust model where the TAOs, or the Trusted Accreditation Organization, they are entitling other actors, the trusted issuers, as the relevant issuers of information for a certain domain, in a member state, in a region, or in the context of today, to assess a product, a service, or a system in a concrete regulation for a concrete standard. The model is flexible and it can create a complex trust hierarchy, which is adaptable to use cases, needs, and different domains. Next slide, please. So this is an example. Now we can see in this slide an example of the trust model in practice, where a trust anchor in the example of today, the National Accreditation Body is acting as the root of trust, following the approach of the Regulation 765. And the National Accreditation Bodies, they are entitled by law, and they can accredit the Conformity Assessment Bodies to evaluate other actors after the relevant processes that are defined in sectorial and European regulations. The services, product and services, the services, product and system that are accredited, they constitute the leaves of this trust chain tree. This is a trust model that can perfectly fit into most part of domains and trust chains. And as I said, this is flexible and it can define several levels of trust if it's needed. So here we can see that we are implementing the same trust model that is used in certification and accreditation services. Next slide, please. So to enable use cases to register or to anchor information of a trust chain and to complete a whole verification of digital information, EBSI is relying on what we call the EBSI trust registries. In this slide, we are presenting the information that EBSI is stored in these registries. First, we are registering information about entities. In the DID registry, we are matching identifiers and public keys. These identifiers are meaningless identifiers, so we are not planning to add a new identifier for legal entity. They are just identifiers that are valid in the context of EBSI to enable entities to demonstrate authenticity of digital information and to enable them to register accreditation or public keys. We have also the Trusted Issuers Registry, where we are anchoring the trust chains, including verifiable accreditation to represent the relevance of trusted issuers in a certain domain. And second, we are also storing information about credentials. Here, we are registering schemas, I mean, the valid structure of a verifiable credential in your context of a verifiable report or an certification. These schemas has been agreed and defined by the business. For example, in the context of one of our use cases and applications, the European learning model for diplomas. And also, we are storing information about revocation to obtain directly from the verifier to the issuer, or depending on the use cases, through the EBSI network to provide a privacy-preserving layer to obtain information about revocation, about the status of the credential. It's very important to mention here that, as I said, EBSI is not storing personal data or personal information in the blockchain, and we are following a minimalistic approach to register information. So EBSI is only storing the minimal data set to verify information. Next slide, please. So to facilitate the interoperability of information and the interoperability between different domains, EBSI is using open standards that are well extended. We are using, for example, as the data format, W3C verifiable credentials, which are becoming the de facto standard to represent digitally verifiable information. And it also permits to define a layer of semantics to achieve interoperability between domains. EBSI is also using cryptography that is already accepted in the context of EIDAS version 1 regulation, as we are sealing and assigning credentials following EIDAS 1 guidelines. And as the information is represented in JSON, we have also guidelines to sign information using JADES, which is the JSON variant for the advanced electronic signatures. And just to mention that verifiable credentials that can be the model for certifications of services, products, and systems, they can be stored in public website. They can be embedded in a QR code, in a PDF, can be printed. They can be protected by digital wallets for companies if needed. They can be shared under a need-to-know policy, but they are always digital verifiable. So they can be represented in many ways. They can be stored in many places with different level of protection of information. They can be public, they can be restricted, but always, independent of the format and in the repository, they are always digital verifiable. Next slide, please. I commented previously the importance of the revocation service to achieve a complete verification of information. In that sense, EBSI is providing an umbrella of possibilities to revoke and to obtain the status of accreditation and revocations, accreditation and certifications when relevant. We are differentiating these different possibilities for the revocation and the status of these credentials by the different strategy on how to access the revocation information, different strategies on how to represent the revocation information. And to explain all these possibilities, we have produced a white paper that is publicly available in our website. If you want to know more, here is on our website. Here I have the link, and later we are going to share these slides. So next slide, please. So here we are describing in a nutshell the concrete benefits that EBSI can provide to you today, now. We consider that EBSI can be the answer to your challenges, the challenges that we have seen before regarding the format. We are sometimes relying on manual signed PDF, where the interoperability is difficult. The processes to read this information in an automated way are complex or impossible. So EBSI can be the reply to how to express a certification in a matching readable and automatically verifiable format. Regarding the real-time verification of information, the information is not always possible to check and to verify information of certifications in real time. So EBSI can be the reply to how to make the information about certifications, including status, in real time to ensure the compliance. Regarding traceability, we have seen that it's not always possible to identify and to trace which actors are changing information or are adding information for certification or accreditation. So EBSI can be the reply to how to express the certification chain so all the actors that are modifying information are traceable. And about discoverability, it's not always easy for customers, citizens, or legal entities to find information to verify certification of accreditation. So EBSI can facilitate the discovery and the distribution of accreditation, certifications, and even service certificates for products, services, and systems. And we consider that EBSI, and talking in a general way, with three technologies like digital wallets, blockchain, decentralized identifiers, can differentiate the added value of the European accreditation bodies. So next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague Lia, that she's going to give an example, an introduction to the FT regulation, and then we are going to come back to explain how EBSI can be introduced in a pilot to support the FT regulation. Thank you, Lia.
Yeah, before we do that, Lia, give me the opportunity to introduce you first and But also thanks a lot, Jose, for the first presentation. It was really excellent, and it sounds so promising. What we can or how we can use EBSI in future for accreditation and certification purposes. I would like also to note, so please, if you have questions to Jose and later to Lia, please use the QA feature. So I can see already a couple of questions in this block, and we try later to capture at least most of them. So that's important. So please use the Q&A feature in Teams. And with this, we come to the next presentation, and the next speaker is Lia Potec here from the European Commission, DG Move, and Lia is working in DG Move, and she is responsible for the preparation, adoption, and currently the implementation of the EU regulation on electronic freight transport information called FT. So she will introduce FT, and I'm so happy that Lia is with us. We have already a very good relationship cooperation since many years. So in regard to how can accreditation and certification be used in the FT regulation. And yeah, so Lia, thanks a lot for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Andreas. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to present the regulation. And I hope that everybody will bear with me while I'll explain first what the regulation is about, and then I get to the certification processes, and then we can also make the link with the use of the EBSI for that purpose. Before I move on, I would just like to ask you if you see my screen in full presentation mode, or you see the present mode, because I never know. I have two screens, and you see that one slide.
It's fine.
It's fine. Excellent. Then I will continue. So Andreas already introduced myself. So therefore, I would just go directly to explaining you what the regulation on electronic freight transport information is about. Well, what we're trying to achieve is to facilitate the exchange of information between transport operators and the authorities in an electronic format when the transport operators need to prove compliance with the quite high number of rules that apply to the transport of goods in the territory of the European Union and of its member states. But we're talking about both EU legislation and national legislation, which requires information. Generally, the information is the same, but it is spread in different legislation, and there can be some variations between them, which means that often there are laws paper that are required by the authorities to be checked in order to retrieve that information for the operators. So what we're trying to achieve is to streamline those processes and also to harmonize the way the presentation is presented electronically. And what we're hoping to achieve is to move from here, and literally this is today that the operators have to carry piles of paper, sometimes they're even boxes when you're talking about a train or a barge, to something like that. They will just show inspection officers a QR code or any other representation of a link from where the authorities could retrieve the information that they need to inspect. However, to do so in a safe and trusted way, it is rather complicated, and that is also a part of where we could see that EBSI could help, and we'll explain. Now, just a few pointers on the regulation. So the regulation is not setting new information requirements, but as said, aims to facilitate the exchange in an electronic format in a harmonized way of the information that is already required by the EU and national legislation. We're not covering just road, but we're also covering rail, inland waterways, and aviation. And by trying to harmonize the way the information is exchanged in each of these transport modes, we are also trying to facilitate that the information is easily transferred between the transport operators as well when the goods are transported by over a number of transport means. The regulation establishes an obligation for the authorities to accept the information in an electronic format, but it leaves the operators the option to use still paper if they choose to do so. However, in order to guarantee that when the operators choose to present the information electronically, the authorities will accept it, and that to guarantee to the authorities that that information can be trusted, the regulation requires the operators to provide this information in a certain way. And put it simply, they need to use platforms or the services of IT service providers that have been certified to comply with the requirements that are set by the regulation, and also they are detailed in specifications that we are also adopting by secondary EU legislation. And the certification that we are requiring is actually the certification that is certification model via the accreditation of the Conformity Assessment Bodies, who will then issue that certification. This is just to give you a view of how we're seeing the processing going. So the operators will save their data in these certified EFTI platforms, which can be part of any IT system. So they don't need to be just specifically set up for this purpose. Just existing systems can be adapted and certified for compliance. They can also exchange information among themselves in the business-to-business domain. But then once the information is uploaded, a unique identification is given for the transport of a certain set of goods, which is communicated then to the different actors in the transport and logistics chain. They can also use that link to retrieve that information, add it, and then when or if and when they are asked for the authorities to prove compliance with the applicable rules, they can just present to the authorities this unique link, and the authorities should be equipped with the software and hardware that would allow them to retrieve this information directly from those platforms. There is also provision that in case there is the system doesn't work for some reason, so the network is down or any other reason that they cannot retrieve the data electronically, still they could check the information in a human readable format, also electronically, can be presented by the respective operator at the time. So the authorities can check it, but they can also have, well, we can also hear it's a certification mark that would allow them to check that actually this data comes from a platform that has been certified. So see, it's actually the certification of platforms is very crucial for the trust in system in our case. Now, the regulation sets a number of requirements. As mentioned, the platforms need to comply with. We're providing general requirements, functional requirements, and detailed implementation specifications which are legally binding. And we will also develop rules for certification that will guide the conformity assessment bodies on how to assess the compliance with these specifications. And those rules will also include indications on when the certification will need to be renewed, when it can be suspended or withdrawn. The regulation also includes requirements for the service providers because we envisage that that there are going to be mostly IT service providers that will be using certified platforms to help operators to hold the data and to make it available to the authorities. But they can also, of course, provide operators other services as well, and not just to make data available to the authorities, but also for any other purposes that might need to use that data. We think that this is going to be the prevailing model, since in transport and logistics, the majority of companies are actually medium, small, and very small companies who probably will not have the capacity to develop these platforms, to host them, to keep their certification. So that is why we also established rules for the service providers to make sure that the data is kept secure and available to the authorities at all times. And for that, we're also going to provide detailed specifications for those requirements that need to be complied by service providers. And we'll also provide the rules for the certification, for the renewal, suspension, and withdrawal of that certification. I already mentioned that we are using the standard certification process governed by the regulation number 765 of 2008 that already also Jose Manuel explained. So we'll have the national accreditation bodies that will accredit conformity assessment bodies that can certify then FT platforms and all the FTI service providers. At the same time, the regulation requires that there are going to be a designated national authority in each member state that will maintain an up-to-date list of the accredited conformity assessment bodies and of the FTI platform and FT service providers that received certification from those conformity assessment bodies in their member state. Of course, based on the updated lists that are communicated by the national accreditation bodies on the one hand and the conformity assessment bodies on the other hand. And these lists then need to be yearly notified to the Commission. So, yeah, that may recall to you what Jose Manuel explaining. Yes, that there is this rather cumbersome process of keeping the list updated, and indeed there may also be a discrepancy between a moment when a platform service provider is certified or conformity assessment has been accredited, and actually when that is also notified to the Commission. The purpose of the Commission getting all those lists is that users would have a central point where they could be able to check all the different certifications in all the different member states for the FTA platforms and service providers. But and in addition to that, actually, in the implementation of the regulation, we also foresee that there's going to be a need for a continuous check, a real-time check of the validity of certification for a platform in particular, but also for the service providers. Because as I mentioned earlier, trust is very, very important in order to allow the proper exchange of information in the framework of this regulation. Here, it is a rather complicated slide, but this is how things will work in practice. I mean, it will be very easy for the user, as in the first slide, but actually behind that, will be quite a number of systems that will need to work with each other and will need to trust each other. And in order to facilitate a trust, we put in place this architecture where the systems need to know each other, but to a certain degree, they don't need to know all the potentially hundreds of IT systems that will be part of this environment, but just a number of them. Like, for example, the systems that the national authorities in each member state will work with will only need to know what we call a FT gate. It's a national entry point, in that member state. So these systems will only need to know each other. Each gate in each member state needs to know the other gates in each or the other member states. So that they don't need to know all the member states authorities in all the other member states. On the other hand, economic operators will also interact only with one gate in one member state and not with all the different competent authorities in all the member states. But for that purpose, we still, so even though we limit the number of actors that need to directly interact with each other, there's still a need to check the trust. So a lot of it, I saw a question, it will go via PKIs between the systems. However, when it comes to interacting with the FTI platforms, as I mentioned before, knowing the status of a certification of a platform in real time is very, very important. And that's what each EFTI gate, this central access point, right, at the level of a member state, will need to do every time a authority will request access to information that is stored on an FTI platform to check if a certain transport is compliant with the applicable rules. And that will happen very, very often. It can often happen from tens to hundreds of times to thousands, maybe eventually a day. So as also Jose Manuel explained, checking this in real time might pose a challenge, since if we're trying to do in the traditional way this update by email, so communicating on the list, that would be rather difficult. Also, we're trying to do everything almost automated, so go machine to machine. So making also this list machine readable might also be a challenge in each member state. And this is overall where we when we learned about the EBSI potential, we thought that indeed it might be a very good use case and a way to solve some of our implementation problems. And yeah, I'll pass back the floor to Jose Manuel to explain to you how that would work. But this is basically the reason why we came to EBSI, and to a certain extent why we are here today, because when we agreed with Jose Manuel and his colleagues that indeed the European blockchain supporting services infrastructure could indeed support the certification, accreditation certification process, that's when I contacted Andreas, who indeed mentioned we have had a very good relation for quite some time now, explained to him, and yes, here we are today. Before I pass on the floor to Jose Manuel, just one last slide from me. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to also mention that, yes, also the economic operators would need to check this list for certification. So that's also adding, they would also need to have access, but they don't have access on the FTI gate in principle. So this list, they will need to check this list somewhere else online. So we would have this list in many places, many actors would need to check them. And as I said, that makes the process cumbersome and not always fully reliable. So the last slide for me is on the timeline for the implementation and application of the regulation, because even though the regulation entered into force in August 2020, actually the moment where it will be fully applicable, it's still some time away. So right now we are adopting finalizing and adopting the detailed implementation specifications for these systems to be put in place by the authorities, the FTAs that we mentioned, but also some other systems that need to be put in place at the level of the competent authorities. We also working on the specifications for the platforms and for the service providers. So all the specifications we're planning to adopt in the next few months. Then we'll also finalize the rules for the certification, which we also hope to adopt by the end of the year. And then the process basically of accreditation and certification of platform service providers would start, so that we have ready in place on the private sector to present this information electronically when the obligation of the member states authorities will also come to apply. And that's only, as we see today, happening towards the end of 2026 or 2027. It's not fully fixed because actually it is linked to the date of publication of the first implementation specifications that we aim to adopt in July 2024. It is not yet guaranteed when they will be published, so we cannot tell for sure. But that's more or less the timeline that we're looking at, that by the latest early 2027, we should have this framework in place, which actually would leave us time to pilot test the use of EBSI for the certification in the framework of the FDA regulation. We hope that there will be, maybe after this webinar, interest in actually also doing so. So I would stop sharing here. Thank you for your attention. I'd like to pass back the floor.
Thank you, Lia, for this insight to the EBSI regulation. So there's something to do for us as EA, but especially for our members, but also the certification bodies. But now we will learn the relation, how EBSI perhaps can be used for FT purposes. José Manuel, please.
Perfect, thank you. So thanks a lot, Lia, for this very clear presentation of the FT regulation. And now let's jump to the next section, how to make this happen. I mean, how EBSI, as Lia mentioned, can support the FT regulation to chain and to verify accreditations and certification of FT platform service providers and FT platform. Okay, so the first step will be to match the EBSI roles and EBSI artifacts with accreditation trust relationships. As we have seen here, we have an already established trust model, a trust chain, where the member state designates the national accreditation bodies. The national accreditation bodies are issuing accreditation to the CAPs, to the Conformity Assessment Bodies, and they are going to evaluate FT service providers and platform. There will be a trust mark, a certification that will be issued from the CAPs after the evaluation of the service providers and platforms. Using EBSI services and the EBSI model, the accreditation can be modeled as an EBSI verifiable accreditation. The certifications or the trust mark can be modeled as an EBSI verifiable credential. And going to the left part, we can see that the NAPs can be represented in EBSI like EBSI Trusted Accreditation Organization. The Conformity Assessment Bodies can be represented in EBSI like an EBSI Trusted Issuers. And the service providers or platform can be represented as holders as the subject of verifiable credential. So now let's go into the next step. The next step is going to identify who is going to do what. I mean, which actors are going to represent these roles. For example, if we want to make a pilot for the FT regulation, we have to identify which national accreditation bodies are going to play the role of the Trusted Accreditation Organization. And for that, they have to be registered in EBSI. They will have an identifier and a public key in EBSI. Then we have to identify which actors are going to be the trusted issuers. I mean, which actors are going to be the Conformity Assessment Bodies. So they have to use a software and some services to be represented in EBSI, to request an accreditation to the National Accreditation Body, and also to be registered in EBSI as a trusted issuer. And finally, we have to identify which actors are going to play the role of service providers or platform. I mean, actors that are going to request certifications to the Conformity Assessment Bodies, and they are going to be the subject of this credential. Depending on the domain, as we said, this certification can be stored in public website. They can be protected in digital wallets if there is a need to know, or they can be, for example, printed in a PDF, embedded in a QR code to enable manual verification. Manual in the sense that we can scan the QR code, but performing a digital verification of the information. The next step will be to model using the EBSI artifacts, using EBSI verifiable credential, the digital information that is needed to complete the trust chain. I mean, the accreditation can be modeled as a verifiable accreditation. So we have to define which information should be stored there and which will be the schema to represent the structure of this accreditation. If this information can be revoked, can be suspended, how to use EBSI revocation service to manage the life cycle of this accreditation. And also regarding the certification, we have to see how to model this certification using a verifiable credential. We have many schemas that can be reused, or maybe we can create a new schema for this certification to identify which information should be stored in the certification, in this case, for FT service providers and platform. If needed, this verifiable credential representing certification can be linked to a life cycle. They can be revoked, they can be suspended, they can be reactivated, or they can be a one-shot credential, just certifying a product as it is, and maybe it doesn't have to be revoked or suspended or activated, but always they have to be digitally verifiable. The next step will be to integrate the ecosystem inside the EBSI services and artifact. So as you can see here, the national accreditation bodies that are represented by a trusted accreditation organization in EBSI, they have to store a DID document in the ledger. We can see here in this box, the orange box, the information that is stored in the ledger. So we see here that the trusted accreditation organization that are represented a national accreditation body, they are stored in EBSI. So we need software that is going to store an identifier representing the trusted accreditation organization and also a public key to permit the verification of information. Then the conformity assessment bodies are going to request an accreditation to the trusted accreditation organization. They are represented by a trusted issuers. They are storing information about themselves in the EBSI ledger. So they are represented by a DID document. It contains a meaningless decentralized identifier, which is valid in EBSI to permit them to store information about themselves. And they are containing also a public key that will permit the verification of this certification mark. As you can see here, we are also storing the verifiable accreditation that represents the accreditation from the national accreditation bodies to the conformity assessment bodies. And finally, FT service providers or platform, they are requesting a certification mark to the conformity assessment bodies. As the information that is linked to the trusted issuer is stored in EBSI, is it possible to use EBSI services to verify the certification mark? Here, this part is completely optional, so the certification mark can be stored in the blockchain if needed, can be stored in a public website, can be protected by a digital wallet, can be protected and only stored in the repositories of information of the FT service providers or platform. The model is completely flexible. The platform and service providers, they are represented by a holder in EBSI, which are the subject of the certification mark. They don't have to store any information about the holder in the ledger, but optionally, if they want, for example, to store additional information for the services, imagine that they want to also to include in the ledger the service certificate, it is also possible. And finally, thanks to the revocation APIs and the revocation services of EBSI, we can manage the life cycle of the accreditation And optionally, if needed, we can also manage the life cycle of the certification marks. I mean, the accreditation and the certification, they can be linked to a status, to a life cycle, and this status can represent that these two digital credential can be suspended, revoked, reactivated. Finally, we have seen that there is a need for the member state, national accreditation bodies, conformity assessment bodies, to maintain list of services, list of conformity assessment bodies, list of national accreditation bodies. Maintaining this list is a cost, and maintaining the information up to date is also a cost. These bodies and the member state can use the information that is stored in the ledger to provide this list, thanks to the services that EBSI is providing. And is it possible, for example, if the information should be presented in a certain format, it's possible to use an API to represent the information in the model that is needed. So now let's jump to the next section. We have included here this slide. Yes.
Jose Manuel, sorry. Before we go on with the pilot, that is the last presentation, if I'm not mistaken. We should make a break here. So not to stop with the webinar, but first we should go for the questions and answers. And later, as a final information, then we will present the proposal for the pilot. So, but thanks again, Jose Manuel, and also again to Lia for the excellent presentations, and also for the first example how EBSI can be applied. So, but now we would like to give the participants the chance to ask questions, and that is what they did. We will see how we can capture all of them, but we have some time, so we are to respond. So I think it will work. But allow me that I have also the first two questions. The first one is, Jose Manuel, you have mentioned, but also in your presentations, always about accreditation and certification. So we know that there are other conformity assessment activities like testing, where we have test reports. We have inspection, where we have inspection reports, and verification. So other types of conformity assessment activities. I'm right, I'm correct that, of course, those activities can be covered under EBSI as well. Can you confirm this?
Yes, sorry, which question it is?
No, it's not in the
okay.
QA. It's just my first question to you.
Yes, can you reply this, please?
You mentioned in your presentation accreditation and certification. Certification is one type of a conformity assessment activity. What is about test reports, testing, inspection? Can we cover that by EBSI as well?
Yes, indeed. So we included here certification as a type of information that can be verified in EBSI, but the model is completely flexible, so it will accept any digital information that is signed by a trusted issuer. The trusted issuer will be the CAP, but it can represent any type of digital credential.
Great. Many thanks. So now we are looking now on the Q&A block. And here the first question is, are the presentations are shared? And yes, I can tell you that we will make the presentations publicly available. I guess we will put them on our website, and we will inform you also about it on social media. So yes, the presentations will be available. Then there's another very specific question to you, Jose Manuel. How many nodes currently belong to EBSI?
Okay, so today in the current EBSI pilot network, we have 37 nodes, 37 node operators that are endorsed by member state representative.
Okay. The next one is a blockchain more energy efficient than a PKI system?
Is a blockchain is more energy efficient than a PKI system? Okay, so the model that is, I think that we have to contextualize the PKI versus decentralized PKI. So, which is the added value of one versus other? EBSI is following a model of decentralized PKI. What does it mean? That we are storing in the ledger information to verify. So we are storing in the ledger, for example, the public key. Replacing this public key in the context of traditional PKI, it's a problem, and I know it's a problem, it's something that is painful. It's working, but it's something that has been to be scheduled with a lot of time in advance in the context of the traditional PKI. In the context of the decentralized PKI, it is offering additional added values as the public key is stored in the blockchain. It can be rotated any day, every month, that it doesn't affect to the process itself. So the information is always there. So comparing to the decentralized PKI versus traditional PKI, I think it's difficult to compare the energy consumption because we are providing a blockchain that is supported by 37 node operators, but it's offering multiple use cases, not only for the verification of digital credential, it's also offering track and trace APIs. So we are using a network that is provided by node operators, which the energy consumption is lower than a web server, and we are providing a network for multiple uses, not only for the verification of information in this context of the many sectors that can be used for national accreditation bodies of conformity assessment bodies, verification of other use cases, for example, diplomas, social security documents, and also for the track and trace use cases. So I think that is difficult to compare the two possibilities. Thank you for the question.
Okay. Another one from the same participant is, how does this project affect the trust service provider business in Europe?
Okay, so for the TSPs or QTSPs, first, EBSI can be seen as an opportunity and also a European framework that can be in line of the future trust service, which are the electronic ledgers. This is first. And second, the QTSPs, as they are evaluated by the CAPs, they can also benefit it from EBSI to share their conformity assessment report and to verify the conformity assessment report using the services in EBSI.
And the last question from this participant is, or one of them, what does national accreditation bodies have to do to change their processes, documents, and make certificates machine readable in order to be able to use EBSI?
Okay, so we are going to explain this in the next slide about how to integrate their business processes into EBSI. But just to replace, so very quickly, we have already defined an EBSI onboarding toolkit. So we are defining here all the steps that you have to follow to integrate into EBSI. The national accreditation bodies and conformity assessment bodies, they can deploy by themselves the technology following these steps. We have also more than 24 software providers that are providing today technology that is aligned with EBSI, so they can contact these software providers and immediately install the software in their application and start to integrate with EBSI.
Great. Jose Manuel, what kind of hard and software do we need to participate on EBSI?
So you will need a software to protect your keys and also to issue credential, to verify credentials, and to contact with EBSI, with the EBSI APIs to register your information. And as I said, we have today a market of software provider that are providing issuer capabilities and verifier capabilities to facilitate this task.
Okay.
So they are sorry, they are providing these capabilities that will enable them to issue credentials, to verify credentials, but also they are providing interfaces to connect into EBSI.
Great. And they are listed, what you have said, they are listed on the Commission's website.
That's it. So I'm including the link in the slides, in the next slide. But if you look into our public website, there is a list of wallet. We call them EBSI wallet providers, but they are providing technology for issuers and verifiers also.
Great. Another question is EA.
Sorry. You mentioned also hardware. It's an important topic to mention.
Yeah.
Usually the domains and the regulation, they are specifying how to protect the keys. For example, in the context of EIDAS, if you want to provide qualified electronic signatures, the private key should be protected by a hardware security module with a different level of security that is established in the FIPS standards. So if they need a hardware security module that can be virtual or physical, it's depend on the quality and the security that is requested by the domain.
Okay. Another question is EA covers more countries than the EU. That what I already noted in my introduction. UK, those countries in the neighborhood covered in the EU neighborhood policy and so on. Can EBSI be used by non-EU countries?
Yeah, so today EBSI is governed by the EBP, as I said. Here we have representation of 27 member states and also Norway and Liechtenstein. As I said, this will in production, the services will be operated by a new legal entity that is taking the form of a new EDIC, which is a legal instrument for the Commission to support multi-country projects. And some member states are joining to this EDIC step by step. But I said, I think that we can present this if we want to test and to pilot EBSI using by countries that they don't belong to the European Union, not to the 27 member states, it can be asked to the governance body of EBSI.
And in this relation, another question, can EBSI be scaled up to the global level to support global trade?
Okay, so it's a very good question because today EBSI is envisaged to verify information that is happening in Europe. For trade, is something that should be defined by my colleagues in the Commission, for example, the one that are working in customs in TaxSud. But indeed, one possibility, if there is a use case to be supported by EBSI, could be that some custom, for example, could interact with EBSI, maybe when products are coming to Europe. Also to mention that in the context of the international verification of information, there are similar initiatives. For example, in South America, they are working with blockchain, so it's a twin initiative, and the aim is to provide APIs and interfaces that are standard to permit the verification in an international way also.
And another question is who ultimately has sovereignty over the EBSI network system and who provides the EBSI system resources? Okay, I guess it's the Commission.
Yeah, so today the Commission is providing what we call the EBSI node, which is a virtual image. It's a software. The Commission is today deploying this software in member state facilities and is orchestrating this network. We are also providing some toolkits, some guidelines about how to specifications. We are also providing what we call the EBSI wallet conformance testing, which is as interoperability specifications and services to ensure interoperability between different software providers. I mean, if we are using a wallet or an issuer from IT provider A, if this is compatible with the verifier from other software provider, we are providing wallet conformance testing to enable software provider to ensure their conformance of their software with EBSI specifications.
Fine. Another participant is asking to see a simple practical example. I think you did already. The example was with the FT regulation. So it's one example. Perhaps it's not simple, but it's something which can come into practice. And then, of course, we will see later then in the pilot and so on some how it will can be used in practice. Then there's another question: why does the IIF search database not use EBSI platform? I would say we can't answer it because the IIF, just for Jose Manuel and Lia, there's a specific database from IIF, that is the International Organization of Accreditation for certification activities, and they have established a database where you can cover information about certificates regarding management systems, so that someone is asking to check, is a certificate valid, is it a correct one, then they can check this in this IIF search database. But there's no link and so on to EBSI. And we have to say that EBSI will cover everything. So that is not only management system certificates, but any other type of information on accreditation and certification issues. To consider implementing such a solution, should we approach the national EBSI representative?
Here, sorry, if they want to participate in the network or if they want to participate in the pilot, if they need to be endorsed by the national representative, this is the question.
It's perhaps we can postpone it because I think that is linked to the pilot.
Yes.
So then we can answer it during the next presentation. Yes. And you have already responded. How many nodes are anticipated to be in the network? So at least the number we have for the time being. Then another one. Will the use of accreditation information not require a standardized format for accreditation scopes?
Yes, that's it. So here, for example, for other use cases, what we do is to register the schema of a verifiable credential in EBSI, and this is crucial to enable the interoperability. So in that sense, as part of the pilot, we should we should define together which will be the schema of an accreditation. It can be represented by mandatory attributes. It can be represented by voluntary or optional attributes. This is completely flexible, but indeed, I think it's a very important question and very important point to cover during the pilot.
Yes, exactly. So there are specific requirements how to express the accreditation scopes that is set up in an international standard 17011, but also in certain EU legislations where there are additional requirements for the scopes. So, and that we have to look at and to check how we can match this in EBSI.
Yes.
The next.
Indeed, so sorry if I may. We are talking here about the national accreditation body is issuing an accreditation to a conformity assessment body. This accreditation can be modeled and can be included which service is entitled the conformity assessment body to evaluate. Okay, for example, if one conformity assessment body is accredited only to evaluate an EIDAS qualified trust service provider for timestamp, this can be included as part of the accreditation to enable the whole verification.
Yeah, the accreditation scope can be in certain cases quite, I would say, complex. It's not only one, but that is something we will evaluate. We will look at, I guess, during the pilot. Another question is, normally for a blockchain to make system changes, more than 50% of the nodes needs to accept the changes to be implemented. How is this governing for EBSI, and how is this described in the white paper?
Okay, so as I said, in EBSI, we are following proof of authority, which is the consensus mechanism for the blockchain. It means that we trust in the nodes that are endorsed by member state. So one node is selected at a time to propose a new block. 2/3 of the nodes must accept the proposed block. And if for any reason, if the block is invalid or if it is rejected, there is a new voting round proposal, which is started by the node.
Great. Another question is, national accreditation systems are already working on digital transformation issues and developing solutions along the lines for the one presented. In Germany, there is a state-funded initiative called QI Digital. It is working on digital certificates as well as digital attestations of accreditation. Have such activities in the member states been included in your analysis of the status quo of the European accreditation system? Could approaches and instruments developed in the member states also be integrated into EBSI? So can they be connected?
Yes, indeed. So as I mentioned, we are using today a model based on this standard, a WTC verifiable credential. But EBSI is a tool and a set of services. So if needed, we can represent accreditation and certification using 509 certificate. We can store information of 509 certificates into the ledger. So you should see EBSI as a set of services and a repository to store information.
Another question is, has there been any consultation with CABS about the ability to provide digitalized data to EBSI and also to discuss points around data ownership and confidentiality? And Jose Manuel, as far as I know, no. But this is something we will discuss, of course, during the pilot. So that's important. So all those very specific, that is the first step to inform here the accreditation and conformity assessment community about this new tool. I think it's very, very promising, but there are many issues we have to look at, to evaluate and so on. And that, at least one part of them, shall be done during a pilot run. And we come to that in a couple of minutes. What about EBSI integrity if participants later leave the EBSI system?
Okay, so EBSI is supported today by 37 node operators. I mean, we have enough node operators to protect the information. And I think this concrete question will be covered in the, for example, in the implementing act and in the regulation, for example, to consider electronic ledgers as a trust service. So usually the trust service, they are defining termination policies. I mean, when the service is stopped, what to do with the information. I mean, if it, for example, with the certification authorities, today they have a termination policy that they have to share the information to provide the revocation of the digital certificate to other party or to other certification authority. So this concrete question about termination of an electronic ledger and what to do with the information will be addressed in the context of the definition of the trust service. Today, as I saying, we have 39 node operators, so this is one of the advantages of having a decentralized network. We are not depending on one only node that can be down or can leave the project. The information is distributed enough to ensure the business continuity and ensure the availability of the information.
Another question is this going to be made mandatory in the long run to be used by CAPS? No, at least there's no discussion about it to make it mandatory. So first, we are happy if we have volunteers, if we have interested national accreditation bodies, but also CAPS, to participate at the pilot. And then we will see how it works. But there's no discussion, at least as far as I know, but perhaps Jose Manuel, but also Lia may confirm this. So that is not an issue.
Indeed,
Lia?
Yeah, I can say, because we are interested in using EBSI for the certification processes and holding certificates, checking in the framework of the FTI regulation, but also we do not intend to make it mandatory. Indeed, we think that this is a very promising model. We'd like indeed to have a pilot to test it and see how it would work, and then that we will have everybody else onboarding without having to mandate it. Also, in order to allow everybody to make their own calculations and perhaps come on board on their own timing. And of course, later we can see whether, if some majority of actors are on board, but some others are not, whether that is affecting the efficiency, the overall efficiency, of the model. In which case, maybe there could be a consideration of making it mandatory, but definitely not at this stage.
Yeah, and that is also important. Of course, we will also promote the application of EBSI also to other DGs in the Commission. So there are, I mentioned, we have currently 110 EU legislations with reference to accreditation conformity assessment. And it would be, of course, useful and perhaps efficient if as many as possible other DGs and sectors may follow and using EBSI. But that is something for the future. Another question, and we have still 10 minutes for questions. If nodes and validators are authorized by a governing body, how do you prevent tampering? They will be performing as the governing body indicates. So is
how to prevent tampering? Tampering of information, or or maybe they are impersonating other actors.
Yeah, well, how you make sure that they are really the governing body?
Okay, so I think that the question is related that if a new node operator want to join the network, how to address that they are addressing the question to the respective national to the respective national representative. I think that it is going in this way.
And they are authorized.
They are authorized. Okay. So for that, we have already defined process to onboard networks in EBSI. So it's a process that we are following. It has to be requested from the node operator to the national representative. They have to fill information about the authority of the node. They are Q-sealing or Q-signing the PDF. We have a help desk office that is checking manually this request, and if needed, they can double check the information. I mean, calling to the national representative to verify the information. So we have a flexible model to ensure that the request to join the network is coming from the national representative. But for the time being, the current network, we are using a model based on qualified signatures that the national representative is signing a PDF to request and to endorse the onboarding of a node into the network, and we are keeping this as a proof.
Okay.
I see a very important question here.
Will electronic documents signed with a digital wallet and digital identity be supported in the FT ecosystem?
Will electronic document? I think it's a question for Lia, no? It's in the context of the FT. Okay.
Indeed, and I can say this. For the time being, we're only looking at the certificates for the FT platform service providers. Rather, because we are still quite some time away, I would say, from having a digital identity for all the different actors involved, and we'll be particularly looking at legal persons, right, entities, organizations, and authorities on the other hand. So before that is established, so we have a digital identity for all these legal entities, I don't think we can really talk about such electronic documents signed in a digital wallet based on a blockchain type of technology, EBSI or other, in the framework of the FDI regulation. So I think we should take it step by step. Let's see how it would work for the certificates, which is a clear case, and where everything is in place, rather, right, and could be made put into practice rather quickly, whereas for the rest would need to wait for some time, which I don't exclude. I think maybe that is indeed the way to move towards. But certainly we are not we don't have all the necessary preconditions at this moment.
Great. How do you manage the token economy?
So for the time being, we don't have any use case for tokenization. So in that sense, we are not. I cannot reply to this because we don't have any use cases based on tokenization or active tokens. During this year, we are going to start a project for also to support minting NFTs in EBSI. But for the time being, we are not supporting this type of use cases.
Another one, does a certificate holder needs to be onboarded to EBSI as well as in order to verify the certificates issued to him?
Okay, this is an important question. The verification services are public. So we are providing HTTP interfaces, we are providing APIs, and this is open in internet. So the verifiers, they don't have to be registered in EBSI in order to verify a certification or in order to verify an accreditation. This is public and everybody can do that. We are also starting, in case it's needed, a trust model for verifiers, because we have seen that in some use cases, imagine that you can present your digital credential only to an authority. Okay, so the verifiers, they will need also a trust model. So for some use cases, we are working with them to define the trust model for verifiers, but it's possible also to make this completely public.
Will the smart contract hold all the informations, or will there be pointers to some other places, servers?
I think the question is related with external oracles. For the time being, we are not using external oracles to consult, to ask for information internally in the smart contract.
Then who is responsible to upload information to EBSI? Only administrative organizations or private companies as well?
For the time being, we are working with a set of project pilots, and we are open to public organizations and also to private organizations. If they are following our use cases or they are coming with a use case that is aligned with the principles of EBSI, it will be accepted.
And now the last question, Jose Manuel. are EBSI aware of the Digital Product Conformity Certificate Exchange Work Group from the UN CFACT? They have produced one white paper on how digital information on product conformity can be exchanged, and are currently looking at producing a follow-up which could be proposed potential schemes for accreditation and conformity assessment information.
Yes, indeed. So in the context of the United Nations, of the UNECE, they are working on two very interesting tracks, at least that I know. One of them is the one that you are mentioning, to use verified credential for trade, to verify information about trade, about transactions. Yes, we are following this track. And also there is a very important track that is about providing transparency in the supply chain, providing interoperable and scalable transparency. This initiative is not based in blockchain, it's just how to represent information about transparency in the supply chain. We are also following them. Last week we met here in Brussels with Steve Kappel, which is the leader of this initiative. So yes, we are following this initiative from the United Nations.
Great. And let me just summarize. It's a proposal. It's a very good opportunity offer from the European Commission to provide this kind of service and tool. And we are looking forward how it may work in the accreditation and conformity assessment ecosystem. So that's fine. We know that there are perhaps plenty other systems, and hopefully they are can be connected and can communicate between each others. But first, I think it's a good step forward for us. That brings
sorry,
me...
Andreas, before leaving, I see that a question that we haven't addressed, I think it's important to mention.
Please.
One of the questions they are saying if we can reuse the current EIDAS ID means to identify the CAPs and the NAPs. And the reply here is we are completely agnostic of the identification or authentication means. I mean, the domain will define how to authenticate CAPs to store their information in EBSI, and how the NAPs are accrediting against the services provided by the CAPs to obtain an accreditation. So we are completely agnostic, and all the models are possible, including the EIDAS electronic identification means, qualified certificate is completely compatible with EBSI.
Thanks a lot. And that brings us now to the last agenda item, and that is what we have already mentioned a couple of times. That's a pilot run. So what are the next steps, and how we can evaluate and can see how it may work in practice for the accreditation and conformity assessment bodies. And please, Jose Manuel, what are the next steps for the pilot?
Okay, let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we do.
For a pilot, this is the three main steps that we are considering. First, you should express your interest and send a request to our EBSI Early Adopter Program. So it's just going to the website, fill a form, and to express that you want to test, to do a pilot with EBSI. We will really appreciate if you do your homework, in the sense that we need to define together which are your user journeys. For example, I, as a CAP, I want to request an accreditation. I, as a national accreditation body, I want to issue an accreditation. I, as a third party, I want to verify an accreditation. I, as a conformity assessment body, I want to issue an accreditation following this schema. So we need your help to co-create, to define together the user journeys that you want to implement using EBSI services and specifications. We also recommend you to deep dive in our website. We have included here what we call the EBSI onboarding toolkit. This is an easy guide that is focused on a top-to-bottom approach, like starting at the business level, and this following all the considerations that you have to take into account to pilot into EBSI. I'm going to share my screen now after this slide. Then I would recommend to gather the interest from different actors that they want to make a pilot, and we can have a kickoff online workshop to define together how to map the user journeys into EBSI roles and services. And during this online workshop, we can also showcase a real-time demo, like using a dummy application to showcase you how can be the registration processes and the verification processes of information, and how to issue and how to verify a certification or an accreditation. And finally, we can start the execution of pilot. As I said, the organization, they can deploy by themselves the software, but we recommend to choose a software wallet provider that they are providing today issuer and verifier services. Here in this link, we are including a reference to the list of IT providers that today they are providing software that is aligned with EBSI specifications. I mean, they have wallets to store credentials, they have issuer services to issue credentials, and verifier services to verify credentials with interfaces that are already integrated into EBSI. So this is the way that we recommend you, but I mean, if you want to deploy your software, you can do that. And the participant in the pilots, they should select a wallet provider or a strategy to implement these services. And we can co-create together. We can put you in contact, for example, to create a cluster that this organization is going to issue a credential, this organization is going to verify a credential, how to implement cross-border exercise to pilot this technology. We are providing technical support. We are providing strategic support about how to ensure the success of the pilot. For that, we are using the services that we are providing through the EBSI Early Adopters Program to follow you and to co-create together and to ensure the success of the pilot. So this is the way that we recommend you to go ahead in the pilot. So the first step, if you are interested, I recommend you to go to our website to fill the form, and based on that, we can have the kickoff online workshop with all the participants that they want to be part of pilots and to have this online workshop all together. You can, for example, follow the link that we are included in the slide to submit an application to be part of a pilot. Here we have the links. We are explaining previous editions of our EBSI Early Adopters Program and the current wave that we are working with different projects. For example, here you can have more information of the current projects that are using today EBSI. We have structured here the section about verification of documents for natural or legal person, verification of products or verification of claims for legal entities. And you can check here all the projects that have piloted or are using today EBSI services. Regarding the list of IT providers that are providing today technology that is aligned with EBSI, we have here, if you want services for companies or service for individuals. For companies, we have we can filter the wallet providers that are providing services to accredited and authorized actors to issue credentials or just to verify. So if you can see here, we have the information of the IT providers, also for wallets for natural person. This is what we call the EBSI onboarding kit. So it's a set of instruction top to bottom where the different pilots, the different organizations that are participating in pilot, they can define the solution, define the scope of the project, the actors that are going to participate in the trust model. We have also some templates to help you to identify the issuers and the verifiers and the trusted accreditation organization. Also to define which are the user journeys that you want to implement in the pilot. For example, here we are providing a template from other use cases for diploma use cases. Like I'm a student, so I want to request a diploma to the university. We recommend you also to design screen flows to facilitate the user experience in the pilot. And finally, design the trust chain, design the data model, define which is the signature profile that you want to implement in the certification or the accreditation. So we have here a complete guide to help you the integration and the definition of the pilots. As I said, we are here to help, so we can co-create together the pilot, and we can facilitate the follow-up meetings, sessions, to facilitate as much as possible the integration of projects into EBSI. And that's all. I encourage you to join to read our website, to send us a request to participate in the pilot using the EBSI Early Adopters program. Yeah, so this is everything that I wanted to say regarding the pilot.
Yeah, many thanks, Jose Manuel. I have to admit we have not yet discussed the pilot in detail, but we have already heard that there are some conditions in regard to accreditation scopes, and all those stuff. So therefore, at least from my perspective, it would be perhaps a good starting point if we would, at least for our members, for the national accreditation bodies, that we will discuss that, and that we bring all together all the volunteers. And I learned there's no limitation, so it's open, and that we then can start together with you to discuss what we need, what kind of information, what tools and equipment, and so that we can give some common instructions to the volunteers, to the participants. And also, in order to have similar pilots. So it makes no sense if we have different pilots for different accreditation bodies, but they are using it perhaps in a different way with different scopes and others. So we need something which is meeting all the existing requirements. So therefore, we will discuss this in EA. And then we are happy to continue with the cooperation, and to have some workshops and so on, and to look how we can facilitate the pilot runs. Would that?
Perfect for me.
Great. Yeah. So but the same for certification. We have many, and I'm happy about it. Many participants from conformity assessment body associations as well. You know, we have the many important associations of conformity assessment bodies as recognized stakeholders. That means where we have signed cooperation agreements with. And I guess we will contact them as well, and to look how we can channel those informations and the pilot runs. I learned also that there's some preparation needed, but if everything goes well, what do you think? What would be the timeline to start with the first pilot, and for a first example? So that is also important. We have learned that FT could be one good example. What do you think? Is it end of the year or?
So is this a question for Lia or for myself?
For both, perhaps. I don't know. So the question is, if we now starting with a pilot run, and to make some preparation, and to collect all the information needed, and so on, when we can start, well, what would be the earliest?
For us, we have already the software provider, we have already the early adopter program, so we are ready.
You are ready. So as soon as we have prepared everything and so on, then we can start. That is what. Okay.
Indeed, and maybe just in case we decide to go for the FTI use case, then we'll need to look when looking at issuing the certification. Obviously, that would need to take some time because we would need to be ready first with the
Sure.
requirements and the certification, which we envisage to have towards the end of the year. But in the meantime, in any case, you need to onboard, right, the national accreditation bodies to establish the accreditation process, and only then we would come towards and test the certification process.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So thanks again to you, to Lia and to Jose Manuel. It was I'm so impressed by the different options we are getting with EBSI. So, and now it's really important to look how we can take that into practice. So that is, I think, important. But if I look also to the questions and some feedback, then many of our members, but I guess also conformity assessment bodies and others are very interested on this technology. So thank you for that. And finally, that brings me also to the end of this webinar. So we will stay in contact. So we will inform the members, conformity assessment bodies and others, everything in the accreditation and conformity assessment ecosystem about the next activities. So I think that's important, and we are keeping in contact anyhow, Jose Manuel and Lia, and we are looking forward, as already mentioned, for the next steps. With that, I'm at the end. So thanks a lot, but also thanks a lot to all the participants. We have had 250. So that's I'm so impressed. So there's a huge interest on this issue. So thanks again to all of you, and still have a nice day. It's sunny, I hope, in your country and your place as well. And see you soon again. And I say goodbye.
It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot for your support, your attention, and see you very soon in this pilot. Thank you.
Thank you to you.
Thank you to you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.